Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this evening's webinar where our host, KP, will be guiding us through tips and advice on confident interactions and presentation skills. My name is Steph. I'm the programs manager for the Employability and Upskilling project at Blossom LGBT, as well as the Arts and Heritage project at Blossom LGBT. I use the he, him pronouns. I'm going to hand over to our host in just a moment so that they can introduce themselves and start the webinar. But firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And I hope you have been enjoying the gorgeous sunshine we've had over the past week. I certainly have. Throughout the session, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions, post your comments, your feedback. You're welcome to remain anonymous if you prefer. The QR code that I'm going to display on the screen in a minute will take you to a form where you can share all your thoughts. And just a gentle reminder, we do not tolerate any form of abuse or discrimination towards us, our hosts, our attendees, or anyone else. This place is for all of us to learn and engage respectfully. And I will hand over now to KP.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is KP and I use they, them pronouns. It's lovely to be live and talking to you all today. It's a new platform which I'm quite excited about using, so we'll see how this all goes. My job role is training and communications officer, so I work for a charity which I'll introduce you to in just a second. But I will talk a little bit about my personal experiences today and this role that I'm currently in, but also some roles that I've been in the past. And hopefully that will give you a better insight into my experience and how that has fed into the work that I do now as a professional presenter. So there are going to be some slides on the screen for you to look at today, but also I'll be doing a lot of talking and getting you sort of thinking about your skills and where you're currently at and what that means for you in the future. A lot of this I've based around this idea of going for a job interview, but of course, presentation skills are relevant across lots of different things that we do as professional and in some of our sort of hobbies and our sidelines as well. So using some of these skills will be helpful for you in different ways that you may not have already thought about. You may think, oh, this is just about job interviews, but actually there's a lot more stuff that can come from building our own confidence and thinking about how we develop presentations and how we talk to people. So we will have a start by just kind of letting you know a little bit about who I am and where I've come from. The Kite Trust is an organisation that I have been working for now for, I think, 4 years. I joined just after the pandemic. I had a change of job and I started as a schools and training assistant. So I helped out with the team, but now I have moved into a presenter role and I also develop communications for the Kite Trust as well. We are a small charity. We're based in Cambridgeshire. And we work with LGBT youth and their families across the county to support them in youth group spaces. So this picture here is taken from a residential trip. We do regular residential trips where we take big groups of young LGBT plus people out into fields in the middle of nowhere to have really nice, holistic, fun, inclusive spaces for them. So they get to stay with us, do lots of fun activities, learn a bit more about their identity and their sexuality, and interact with their peers and interact with adults who carry these identities with them as well. We also offer training. So my role within the charity is to offer training around identity and sexuality and kind of what that means for people. And I do a lot of work, particularly with professionals. So I go out to lots of different organisations. I go to the local NHS organisations. So in Cambridge, it's Addenbrooke's. I do lots of work with other charities and other organisations as well. I also go into schools quite regularly. So schools, colleges, universities to talk about these requested topics. A lot of the work that I've been doing over the last couple of years in particular has been around trans identities. So I identify as a non-binary person and I talk a lot about kind of my personal experiences and the experiences of the young people that we work with. A lot of the training that we put together is built on their experiences and what they want professionals to know. So we act as kind of a mouthpiece for young people who want their voices to be heard, but maybe don't feel like they're being heard in other scenarios. So, of course, we are based specifically in Cambridge, but our training extends all over the country. So if you ever think you are in an organisation that maybe needs a bit of support around their inclusion and diversity practices, you can reach out to us and we'll be able to help you. All my details are here, and you can look on our social media at the Kite Trust to find out more about us as an organisation. And just to boast a little bit about myself, but I think this is important in kind of the context of what we're talking about today. I wanted to give you a bit of an explanation of who I am, so you don't just think I'm just some random person who's rocked up to talk about presenting and public speaking. I have been a formal educator and trainer for the last, well, probably about 12 years. I left university, I had a museum-based degree, and I worked in archaeology sites and in museum and national trust sites as an education officer. So my focus was on building connections between collections and items and kind of spaces with parents, families, young people, and also schools and adults as well. So I started there, and then I moved into zoo education, where I was for quite a long time. And now I work as an educator for the Kite Trust. So I work in equality, diversity, education. I also do a lot of talking in my free time. I just love talking, love the sound of my voice. I am also a professional presenter for a sport called roller derby. I go off and do commentary, and I do live streams for roller derby competitions all over the UK. I do a lot for my home team in Cambridge, but also for London, places like that. So I have a lot of different skills, and I'm hoping to share some of my confidence and my understanding of this as we go through. Because when I first got into thinking about presenting, and when I was at university in particular, and they asked us to do presentations, I was actually terrified of public speaking. I really hated standing in front of people. I am neurodivergent, so I struggle to make eye contact sometimes, and I didn't really know this about myself when I was a student, but I understand it a lot more now. So being able to make eye contact and kind of interact with an audience and stand there and feel confident and empowered was something that was really alien to me. And it has taken a long time for me to kind of build up my confidence and learn more about myself and learn what I'm capable of and kind of understand how passionate I am about these sort of skill sets. So that's my experience that I'm bringing today, and I hope this kind of shows in the training that we're doing today. And as Steph said at the beginning, do throw questions at me at any point. I'm really keen to hear what people have to say. If you have any sort of thoughts that you want to share or experiences that you've had, please do put those in the chats, and they will fly their way to me, and I'll be able to answer them for you. Oh, so it's cut off the screen, apologies. But the learning outcomes from the session today, then, as I said, we are going to focus a little bit, first of all, on presentation skills and how we build a presentation, because a lot of being confident in speaking and standing up in front of people is making sure that you have good, relevant, and interesting content to share with people. If you go into a space where you have a naff presentation, you don't have the right experience or knowledge, you don't have the right content on the screen, it can really throw you for a loop, and it will just make you feel really like you're struggling in that space. I also want to talk a little bit about what sort of employers are looking for in presentation skills. As I said, I will sort of think about interviewee-based presentations, and I'll talk about my experiences of that. But a lot of this, again, also will move into, if you're applying for a job, you will probably be expected to present on certain things at different points. So some of the skills that I talk about today will be relevant from that. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about presentation nerves and that kind of fear that we have when we stand in front of people. I am always a little bit nervous. I have like a kind of nervous energy that I build up just before training. And it sometimes shows in the first few slides where I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to find my words, just trying to find out where I am. And I think that's a very normal experience for lots of people. And what I want to talk about is how we can kind of overcome that, or how we can use that energy in a kind of positive way to create exciting and interesting presentations for you. And don't worry, I'm not asking anyone to present or do anything in this session. This is not me being like, I'm going to get you to do the session for me. It's going to be me talking through some of these theories and ideas for you. So I'm hoping that's what people were kind of reaching out and looking for today in this session. So the first big question is, you've been asked to do a presentation. This may be a result of you being invited to an interview as an application for your job. You may have to present on something that you've been working on in your organisation or at college or school. You may have a big project that you're really passionate about, but you may feel a little bit nervous about talking about this in front of other people. And as I said, it's very normal. There are some people who are just really naturally skilled presenters who are like, oozing confidence who could just step up and do anything. But for a lot of us, we have to learn these skills. And this is what I've had to find in my time, is that I've had to kind of sit and think about, okay, what do I need to do and how can I be better at this? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start off with the basics. We're going to start off thinking, okay, I've been asked to do this thing. Where do I begin? And what we need to do when we are first presented with anything about creating a presentation or talking in public or talking to a large group of people is, what is actually being asked of you? What is it they are looking for? In the case of going for a job interview, they're going to be looking to see, okay, is this person confident in what they do? Are they going to be able to talk to us in a personable and interesting way? Are they going to have the confidence to stand up and do something that they maybe have not done before? When you're in employment, you're probably going to be maybe presenting, as I said, projects that you've been doing, or you may go into a role where presenting is part of your day-to-day role. So education, or maybe you're going to become a manager and you're going to have to start training people in your team. There are lots of different scenarios that may rise up from here. So you've got to think about, okay, what is it that I am going to be doing? And then there's other questions that come out of that. So what are they asking for? What is it? How long is it going to be on for? That's another question that we have to think about. How long is this presentation going to be? So for me today with this presentation, I was like, right, I have an hour. I will probably keep it at about 45 to 50 minutes because I know that people might have questions and there may be things that people want to discuss in more depth. So I'll make sure I kind of manage my time correctly. I also have to think about, okay, I'm a very fast talker and I'm kind of consciously thinking about, okay, how can I measure my time without kind of going off on big rambles, which is I sometimes do. If I get excited about something, I will often go off on a tangent and I get sort of distracted. Who is your audience? That's something that's also really, really important, because we have to change our education type or our lecturing type based on kind of the setting and the audience that we're working with. So when I was working in the zoo, I would work with maybe a primary school reception year group of children in the morning, and then in the afternoon I might have a college business course that I had to teach. I might then in the evening have an adult education university of third age group coming in. So I have to remember how and why I'm going to be educating these people and what I'm going to do in terms of my presentation skills, because I would have to adapt and be fluid in those different moments. So it's really good to know, if you're going for an interview or if you're going to be presenting, who's going to be there, find out those things. They will probably tell you if you have been sent an email and been asked for an interview. They might have the interviewer, but they may also have some of their colleagues come in. So in my current role, we will often have a panel of people that will be doing the interviewing. We often invite some of our young people, some of our youth panel, as well as staff members. So it's good to find out these things when you're looking to kind of develop these presentations. And as I mentioned earlier, what are they looking for? What are the outcomes that they're hoping for? So an employer is going to be potentially looking at you to be like, okay, what is this person able to offer this organization? Are they maybe confident? Are they maybe knowledgeable? There's different things that we have to think about. So we have to think about what the employer wants. We may also have to think about what the attendees are hoping to get out of this. Are the attendees, if you're delivering a presentation, are they hoping to build their knowledge? Are they looking for some fun? Are they looking for a little bit of entertainment? There may be something that you have to think about as well. And you also have to think about the topic that you're going to be talking about, which is obviously very important, right? So if it's an interview, okay, who is this company? What is this company? How much do I know about this company? I have to do my research and go away and just spend a little bit of time learning about their ethos and kind of their values. Because if you're going in into interview, you want to show that you understand the kind of dynamic of this organization. You want to say, okay, this organization is really passionate about this, so I'll make sure I kind of reference that in the interview presentation that I'm doing. If you are public speaking, if you're out as an activist, or you're looking to kind of talk to people about a campaign that you're really passionate about, you need to make sure you have the right facts and the relevant information when you're presenting this campaign or presentation. Often people will sometimes challenge you or ask you questions as a result of you delivering presentations. So it's important that you engage and listen to what people are saying and have kind of a bank of knowledge that you can draw on. No one's asking you to be an expert, unless, of course, this is you being an expert in that space. But generally, it's important to have a good sort of general knowledge about the subject in particular. So when I deliver training on trans identities, it's not something I'm super knowledgeable about because it's not a complete lived experience for me. I have some experience of it, but not all. So I will say, hey, like, this is my experience. This is what I know. This is what I understand. This is what colleagues have told me. This is what I've learned about in this training. And if there's any gaps in my knowledge, I will be honest about it. And I'll say, oh, I'm not sure about that. That's something that I haven't come across before. Or I will say, maybe we can go and talk about that, or I can find out some more information for you and let you know in the future. So knowing your boundaries and knowing what you are going into is really, really important to start with. Sorry, change the slides. So I mentioned for job interviews, we have to kind of think about the organisation. But the thing about going for a job interview is that they have invited you for this interview, right? They are already interested and excited about you. You've clearly met the certain sort of qualification criteria that they've met. So often in job applications, they ask for your kind of university degrees or your college diplomas. They will ask for certain bits of information about you. And on paper, you can read like the most amazing human being ever. And it's not until interviewers meet you that they will kind of make that assumption, okay, maybe this person isn't quite the right fit. But remember, they're not trying to catch you out. They're not trying to make a joke out of you. They're excited for you and they want you to be in that space because they think that you might be a really good fit for their organization. So sometimes people get panicky and nervous. Oh, they're going to hate me. They're going to hate me. They're not going to hate you. They're there because they want to learn from you and they want to find out more about you and see if you fit into that organization. You could have every qualification under the sun, but if you go in and you're not super personable and engaging, they're not going to be interested in you. So just have that in your mind. Just know that they are not trying to upstage you or throw you off. They're just there to kind of test the waters and explore who you are. And something else that I was talking to a friend of mine about was, what is this? What are they looking for in a presentation, an interviewer? And that's something you have to think about. So if it's a job where you are going to be presenting regularly, they're going to be looking not necessarily at the content of what you're presenting. They're going to be looking at your skill set. They're going to be looking at how you present, how you hold yourself, those kind of things that we're going to talk about later in the presentation. That's what they're going to be observing. They're going to be kind of looking at your cues and how you are in that space. From potentially maybe sort of scientific job. So my wife is a scientist, so when she goes off for job interviews, they will often kind of test her scientific knowledge. So they're looking at the kind of content. They're kind of like, okay, what does this person know? What are their experiences? What can we use this person for in a place? And in the past for her, it has meant that she has maybe not got the job that she applied for, but they have said, actually, I think you'd be really good for this other job because you have this skill set that we've seen from you coming in to present your work. So knowing the difference between, are they looking at who I am in terms of my presentation skills and my public speaking skills, or are they kind of more interested in the content, is also relevant. It's something to think about. So I just wanted to use an example from my previous role. So when I came into my job now, the interview process was actually really lovely. I had a chance to read all the interview questions beforehand. My organisation sent all of those to me. And it was very much like let's read the questions and then I talk back, read the question, talk back. So they were looking at kind of how I was talking to them. But it wasn't about me creating a presentation. However, in my last role, I was invited to do a presentation and also an on-the-spot presentation as well that I wasn't prepared for, which was quite scary. But I had a few things in my bag and I was kind of prepared for it because I had sort of set myself up to be able to do this. So the expectation that they asked me for was to deliver a 5-minute presentation suitable for year 5 to 6 students, so sort of 10, 11-year-olds. And I had the choice to do it on any topic I wanted, which seemed quite a wide option. And they said, feel free to use props or a PowerPoint. So when I got this, I looked at this and I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick apart the things that I need to reflect on and think about in this. So I was like, right, first of all, I know the time. I have 5 minutes. And I was like, right, okay, how much can I talk about in 5 minutes? That's not an awful lot of time. So I have to think about how I structure and build the presentation in that 5 minutes. Beginning, middle, and end is going to be over quite quickly. I don't want to fill it full of faff and nonsense. I want to keep it nice and short and coherent and be about something that I'm passionate about, because as it says, I could talk about anything. And I think I talked about archaeology. That was something that I did as my degree. So I was like, this is something I could talk about, and talk about a different period in history that the year 5 and 6 students were talking about. And what was interesting about that was when I spoke to my boss afterwards, he said lots of other people who did the presentation, they talked about zoos and they talked about animals and they talked about things that were relevant to kind of what is expected from this role. But he said to me that it was more my passion and my excitement of talking and presenting that got me the job, because actually anyone can kind of learn stuff on the job. I know a lot about animals now, but at the time I was kind of learning and developing as I went. But he said there was something about the kind of enthusiasm that he saw that he was quite excited for. I also noticed this bit about props or a PowerPoint. And in my mind, I was like, right, everyone's going to go for a PowerPoint because that's easy. We can all make PowerPoints, right? It's a skill that I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. But generally, that's kind of people's go-to when we're presenting. So again, when I was asked to do this session, I was like, right, PowerPoint, how am I going to build it? But for me, actually, in this moment, I was like, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in without any cards. I'm just going to have a little bit of speech to do. And I'm also going to bring in some tools. So I brought in some props and some bones and all sorts of stuff. And I use those in a very visual manner. As you can see, I really like to present with my hands. I like to throw my hands around a lot. So I was like, if I have a prop, I can hold something and I can demonstrate it and I can use it. And again, this was good because nobody else used any props apart from the other person who got the job alongside me. So they were offering up options, but they were kind of testing us to see a little bit about what we were capable of. So think about these things when they come up. The on-the-spot presentation was the most terrifying thing I think I've ever done in my life, but I had spent some time thinking, okay, what are they going to ask me to do? Because I know that a 5-minute presentation isn't, they're probably going to ask me some questions, but there's also going to be something else. And what they got me to do is they had loads of animal collections out on the side. And they were like, right, grab some things and come and present to us as if we were a family of 4 with 2 small children. And I was like, right, again, I've got to pick apart what they've said. This was on the day. They said a family of 4, 2 small children, probably under 5. So I got down and I sort of manipulated my body language, and I was talking in a very slow and clear way, in an excitable way, as if they were both the children rather than the parents, and kind of interacting in a way. So what I was doing there was showing that kind of change in being able to present. I'd moved from slightly older children to a younger demographic. And again, it's what helped me get the job. So I was really pleased with that. But I've used this as an experience to talk about these are the things that we have to think about. We have to be dynamic and we have to be prepared, because otherwise things can kind of fall apart for us. So building a good presentation is the basis of kind of how we start off with our presentations, if that's something that has been asked of you. As I said in the last slide, do you really need a PowerPoint? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can be kind of off the wall. You can use maybe a couple of cue cards or have a little page of notes and you can just talk through things. You might have a whiteboard, you can draw stuff or pin up images. It doesn't always have to be PowerPoint or a slide deck or whatever kind of program you use. So you can use Canva. Canva's quite good for creating presentations on. And as I said here, it should be support. It shouldn't be the kind of focus of your presentation. There is nothing worse than going to a talk or having a workshop where the person who is delivering the training is just turned to the side, not talking directly at the audience, but is turned to the side and is just reading word for word the slides behind them. No one's engaged. No one's interested in that. It's not there to be kind of your entire script. What it is there for is to be just a kind of few points to remind you and to remind the audience what you're talking about. So all the slides that I'm showing today have text on, and I've put a little bit more text than I would probably normally do in some cases, but that's because I knew this was going to be a live kind of broadcast system like this. So I wanted to make sure information was being shared. But what I've done is I've used very basic colors, images, a few bullet points here and there, and I've kept it really simple and really clear. And what I've done is I've been like, oh yes, this slide is the next slide. This is what I'm going to talk about when it comes to this slide. So a presentation should never be the kind of focal point of your presentation. A lot of the things that I used to do in my old job when I was working at the zoo, it would just be pictures of animals, and we'd talk about the animals, and maybe we'd have props, and maybe we would go out into the zoo and look at the animals and talk about them. So it's about kind of complementing the work that you're doing. As a presenter, you should be confident enough to kind of talk about these things without this need for kind of burying ourselves in notes or looking up at the screen reading notes. And I'm going to give you some advice about how to do that later on. Just a few things about designing presentations then. So you can see mine has kind of clipped a little bit. The formatting has changed, which was something I wasn't prepared for. So I'm holding my hands up for that. I should have had more time to be prepared and uploading slides into this format to make sure that things were a little bit more clear. So there you go. See, not everyone's perfect. But I wanted to just give you some understanding of how to make a presentation. I've been to lots of presentations. I've seen different formats of presentations. And the best presentations that I've seen are simple, clear, and effective. So colours is a really big thing in presentations that people often forget about. People get excited and they want to put lots of colourful text and images in tiny writing on the screen. We have to think about, okay, is this inclusive and is this suitable for everyone in the space? Is everyone able to read these contrasting colours? There might be colourblind people in that space. If text is too small, people struggle to read it as well. So thinking about keeping your colour choices very minimalistic. I always default to black screens with white text because I think that's easier for people to kind of read. It's more high contrast. And then I will occasionally put a little pop of colour in. So for example, as my heading, I will keep a little bit of colour going through there. And I will have things like my organisation's logo, which I'm required to have on every slide pretty much. And I've talked about this already. Too much text on a slide is no one's going to read it, right? Everyone's going to look at that and they're just going to glaze over. You can physically see if you're in a room full of especially students who are kind of bored already and don't really want to be there. As soon as they see too much text on the screen, they just glaze over. They're not interested. So what we want to do, as I said, is keep it nice and simple. We're going to have bullet points. We might have a couple of images. We might have some clip art. If you want to use clip art, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It just kind of emphasizes a point. But we're going to keep it nice and clear and simple. I have been, again, with students who are like, oh, there's not enough information on the slide. And I'm like, well, you should be listening to what I'm saying because that is what I'm presenting and talking about. And often I will sometimes share these slides after trainings that I've done so people can go back and reflect on what they've talked about. And it will help them remember what I talked about. Images. So images are good if they're big and they're colourful and they're engaging and they're relevant. There's no point in just shoving a load of pictures on a slide, all different sizes and sort of quality, I suppose. No one's going to engage with that. No one's going to be interested in that. It's just it's an overload for people. Stick to maybe 1 or 2 images per slide. Keep it nice and simple and keep the pictures nice and big and bold so people can see them. So the image on the left here, obviously everything's kind of all over the place. Everything's different sizes. Sometimes you see people use images as the sort of full background of their presentation slide. And that you just can't read the text over the top. People put text over the top, you can't see it. There's no point in having that. Keeping it as simple as you possibly can is the way forward because it means that more people can engage with it. And again, this is relevant to different audiences as well. So when I teach young people, very little ones, I will basically just have images. I will just have one big image per slide and we'll go through them and we'll talk about each one. And it will just be like a nice little reminder for me, oh, that's what's coming next. And I can use it as kind of a jumping off point to talk about things. A few other things to think about when building the presentation is kind of thinking about the flow and the story that you're telling. We talk a lot about storytelling when we're designing and presenting and the power that a presenter has to create imagery and excitement and enthusiasm for their story. So what you're doing when you're presenting is you're sharing information, but you're also sort of creating excitement and enthusiasm for a topic. So again, talking about myself, we train about LGBT things all the time. I have LGBT lived experience. So I get really excited and passionate when I talk about my experiences and how they interact with each other. And that excitement and energy flows into the people that you're talking with. They will absorb what you're doing and they will feel that energy that you're bringing to that space. So you want to think about how you're going to convey this information. Because if you're just listing off a load of facts, that's really boring. It's very dull. Nobody wants to sit there and just have facts thrown at them. That's like being at school, right? You don't want that. So think about, okay, where am I going to start? Where am I going to end up? And how am I going to get between those 2 points? So often what I say, especially if you're doing a professional presentation, is think about the outcomes that you want to start off with. Tell your audience those expected outcomes at the beginning. As you're going through the presentation, reflect on those outcomes. And then at the end, go back to those outcomes and say, okay, these are the outcomes that we mentioned earlier. Have we met them? I personally would think so. So for our outcomes, we're talking about presentation skills. And I think this section has been quite helpful in talking about those different presentation skills. Flow is really important as well. So thinking about the order you present in. Sometimes, I've been to presentations where people sort of start on one topic and then they jump to another topic, but then they're like, oh, actually, I want to go back and talk about this. And their slide deck maybe doesn't kind of match up and things are all over the place and they're flipping backwards and forwards about things. That can be very tedious and it can be very distracting as well. So avoid kind of a mismanagement of structure. Try and keep things structured as much as you possibly can and have that kind of 1, 2, 3 beginning, middle, end. Just like someone who writes stories or poetry, you think about, okay, these are the 3 sort of sections that I want to have in my session. And that goes for 5-minute presentations, half-day presentations, 2-hour presentations. Any of those, you want to keep it within those time frames, but you want to keep those kind of structures. And keep it relevant as well. If you've been asked to present on a topic and you start going off on a massive tangent about something that's completely irrelevant, or you've got 10 or 15 slides and 5 of them are about something slightly different that doesn't really relate to the topic that you're talking about, ditch it, get rid of it, start again. Often you want to keep it as short and sweet as possible. So in this case, for example, I've got an hour today, so I've had to cut back on a few bits that I've had in here. And I think I've come out with a better presentation for it, because otherwise sometimes it gets a bit stale and it's just me waving my arms around talking about the same point over and over again. So keep it reflective of the time, but keep it relevant and keep it sort of focused as well. Because if you lose focus in your presentation, the audience will lose their focus as well and they'll drift off and get distracted. Especially true with young people, you've got to keep it short, sharp and succinct as well. So now we're going to think about, okay, we've built our presentation, we've created our presentation, it's lovely, it's glossy, it's shiny, it's got all the relevant information in, it hasn't got too much text, it's not overwhelming, I'm very proud of it, I've created it. Oh no, now I have to present it. And this is where people tend to fall up, because lots of people can make really cool, interesting presentations, they can put fancy animations in, they can have really beautiful imagery, but as soon as it comes to standing up and talking in front of someone, people clam up, which is a normal experience, right? Being in front of people is often, especially for neurodivergent and sometimes LGBT people who may not feel comfortable in their identity, it can be very difficult to then stand in front of people and open yourself up and your identity up to those people. So we've got to think about, okay, how can we overcome that and think about what qualities we are looking for when we are delivering our training session. So I don't know if people are in chats or want to add anything, but you can think of some and think about, okay, when I'm standing up in front of people, what do I want to portray? What do I want to tell people about myself, and what am I showing people about myself? One of the best pieces of advice that I got when I first started professionally training was from a colleague of mine who was a gay man, and he was like, you know what you need to do when you start presenting? You need to channel your inner drag persona. And at the time, I didn't know an awful lot about drag. I've got very into drag in the last few years, more than just RuPaul's Drag Race, I should say. And I was like, okay, let's go off and learn about drag and what that means. And I watched Paris is Burning, and I was like, wow, all these people are so confident and they're so enthusiastic. And drag is all about kind of creating a persona which is super confident, interesting and exciting. And I thought about how that related to my presenting, because obviously I'm not going to dress up and wear full makeup in a presentation because I'm not that sort of person. But I thought about this idea of kind of creating almost like a staged version of who I am, a more confident and a more exciting version of who I am to present with. And it's this kind of fake it till you make it mentality, right? This idea that, I know that sounds very cliche, but the more we do something and the more we kind of present as being confident, the more confident we get. And as I say, that is a bit of a cliche, and I think people kind of roll their eyes when you talk about that, but it is a genuinely true fact that the more you fake your confidence, the better your confidence gets. There's been research into it, lots of stuff about how just kind of assuming you're kind of authority in a space, assuming your kind of presence in a space means that you will just be very confident in that space. And I think as LGBT people, as I say, we sometimes feel a little bit nervous about being out and proud in a space, but actually in a presentation space, you are in charge, you are leading that space, you have kind of a power over people, so you want to create that persona for yourself. So what are we looking for when we're looking at a presenter? What are employers going to be looking at, and what is the audience going to be looking for? There's lots of different things that we can talk about here. These are the kinds of main attributes that people are expected to meet as part of going to an interview, going to deliver a presentation. Appearance is really, really important. And it's not just like you have to wear a suit, you have to do this, you have to dress up. It's more about how we present ourselves. It's not just about what we're wearing, it's about the kind of way we're standing and the confidence that we're holding ourselves with. So you've probably read a lot or heard a lot about kind of body positivity, kind of the power pose, which I'll talk about in a bit, but this idea of just being able to kind of roll your shoulders back and hold your head up high and show that you are enthusiastic and that you're confident. If we're sat with our bodies kind of tucked in, if we're with our arms crossed, our head is down, we're not providing the audience or the interviewer with a sense of confidence. So appearance is something really important to think about. What clothes, what outfits do you have that make you feel really confident and professional? Don't put on something that's really uncomfortable. If you hate wearing shirts and ties, think about other options. Have a look around. Look on, I don't know, Pinterest, TikTok. There's people that design these things for a living, right? You can find out other alternative options for a suit and a tie or a dress and high heels. You don't have to fit into one of those boxes, of course. But think about, okay, this outfit makes me feel really confident. I feel like a boss. I feel like I'm in charge. This is what I'm going to wear for my interview. Obviously, it has to be appropriate, but it's going to be something that makes you feel safe. I've been into interviews where I've worn something that I didn't feel comfortable with, and it shows. You can tell that someone's not comfortable in the outfit they wear. If you're going into an extremely formal organisation, you will probably expect to wear a suit and tie every day. So making sure you show that at the start is something that's really important, something that's highly formal. Some other roles will be a little bit more casual, but you want to make sure you're just dressing and sprucing yourself up a little bit ahead of delivering a presentation. Of course, as well, with gender diversity, we want to make sure that we are confident in what we're presenting. So if you do not feel confident in sharing certain parts of your identity, just think about how you can minimize the anxiety that you might have from maybe dressing a little bit different or going full head on into it and be like, look, this is who I am. This is how I want to start off in this role. And I want people to know this about me as I go into this position. Your attitude is really important as well. Are you enthusiastic? Are you excited to be there? Or as I say, you kind of like, I'm not that bothered, I'm not that interested. That will be read instantly by any interviewer. Any good quality interviewer will be looking at how you're holding and sitting and engaging with people. This was an image I got from the internet, and it does say good eye contact, which, as I said, is very difficult for some people. But you sort of start to learn ways in which you can kind of look just slightly past someone or just slightly at the top of their head, look at their forehead. Maybe you don't have to necessarily make direct eye contact with people. When I'm talking to a room of people, my eyes are kind of moving all over the place. I am kind of looking at people that maybe I know, so I feel a bit more confident and able to look at them. When you meet people, when you go into a presentation, you want to maybe have a chat with them and kind of build a camaraderie with them. And then they may be someone that you may be able to make eye contact with. Some people are really friendly in an interview or a presentation. People are there because they're excited to see you. I've also been in spaces where the interviewee was absolutely giving nothing away. They just wouldn't smile. They wouldn't engage with me, and it's quite disconcerting. But I didn't let it stop me. I was like, no, I'm a positive, happy person. I'm going to keep talking, keep smiling, and keep trying my best to make eye contact. Confident manner kind of comes in with that as well, right? Kind of how you hold yourself. Interesting voice is about how we talk and the way we talk in professional spaces. So I'm talking a lot for this session, right? And I'm aware that it's just my voice coming through. But having an interesting voice is about being kind of interesting and talking in ways that isn't just that sort of flat monotone that some people end up falling into. I worked with a lot of people who were zookeepers who used to do a lot of presentations at the zoo I worked at. And you could tell that they weren't used to public speaking. They were very focused on their animals. That's not something that they used to do. So they would speak in this very monotone voice, and then occasionally they'd go up, and then they'd come down, and then they would speak in the monotone voice, and then they go up, and then they go down. And if you're a paying guest, you hear that, you're like, I don't want this is incredibly boring. So trying to talk in a way that is normal to you. So I kind of talk very enthusiastically. I throw my hands around when I'm talking. I get really excited about things, and I allow myself to do that, because otherwise you just come across as a bit of a robot, and nobody wants that. I think being true to yourself is a really, really important thing to think about. I've talked about knowledge, and that kind of comes from the presentation building that we've already done, right? We've kind of been very enthusiastic about developing our presentation, and you are a passionate person about that topic. So make sure that shows in the enthusiasm and knowledge that you're sharing. Have good facts, have good anecdotes as well. Always reflect on your personal experiences or stories that you've heard. The feedback I get from lots of my TKT training is that people like it when I talk about my experiences of going off to a school and hearing this thing about a teenager that was trans, that was really looked after. People want to hear those real life true stories. They want to hear interesting facts. They want to hear fun things, and they want you to be fun along with that, right? So if you're in an exciting environment, you want to be enthusiastic and fun. And we've talked a bit about audience as well. So this is quite a lot to ask, right? This seems like an overwhelming amount of things that you have to think about. And for the first few times, it can feel extremely overwhelming, extremely nerve-wracking. And we have to think about, okay, how can we alleviate some of those nerves and pull back on some of those nerves? One thing that as I start this slide, I say the word One thing that I learned early on in my training career was about filler words and non-words. And this is a type of way of speaking that brings on an anxiety where we fall on these words that aren't really relevant, or are words that we sort of use to fill the gaps. I did have a video here, but unfortunately it doesn't work with this platform. But there is a really great person that I will reference in my resources later, Vin Giang, who is a professional speaker coach, and he does a lot of videos about what a filler word is and why that's important and why we have to think about how we manage those. And I'm not going to say get rid of them completely, because that's impossible. I have been a presenter, as I say, for years and years and years, and I still say so, okay, that's just a very normal part of speaking. You do it when you're speaking to your friends and you're speaking to your family. It's how we speak. We say like a lot. I remember growing up as a teenager saying like at the beginning of every sentence. But these are words that we use as kind of pauses, and they distract from the content that we're using in our presentations. So I want you to think about this. And maybe if you're planning a presentation, you're looking to do a presentation, deliver a presentation to someone you know and get them to pick up on any words and things that you say. I used to say guys a lot when I was talking with young people. Okay, guys, all right, guys. And again, obviously that's quite problematic in terms of gendering of people, but it's also a word that I just used all the time. And my boss at the time was like, you need to stop using that word. And the moment you take these filler words out of a sentence, the more clear and concise and coherent the commentary becomes. And it sounds a lot more meaningful and a lot more interesting. And it changes the pace in which you speak as well. So as I said, I speak really fast. So by actively stopping myself from saying these words, these filler words or non-words or these sounds, I'm able to kind of slow down my pace. You can see I kind of take pauses and I'm sort of thinking a little bit more about what I say, which means that actually it sounds a little bit more like I know what I'm talking about, surprisingly. So what we say is just have a breath and take it slow. And as you're speaking, try and stop yourself saying as many of these words as you can. Don't get rid of all of them because it makes you sound like a robot, but just think about how you talk. It's a really good challenge to see what happens when you change up this sort of structure in your speaking. So yeah, definitely have a look at I will share the resources at the end of this presentation, but look at some of the videos that talk about filler words, non-words, and why they're really quite annoying for some people. Some people use them a lot more than other people. So just to finish up then, managing our nerves. Sorry, the formatting has gone a bit weird again. As I said earlier, you're not being set up to fail. People are asking you to present on stuff because they want to hear your thoughts on something, and they also are maybe looking to offer you a role. They just want to find out a bit more about you. Have a think about your anxieties. If you've ever stood up in front of people, I remember doing it at school, having to do presentations at school, and I hated it because I was queer and I didn't want to be in that space and I didn't want to be seen. And then standing up as a queer person, a fat person as well, it was quite daunting for me to be in those spaces, and I absolutely hated it. And it's taken me a long time to realize why that was and what that was to do with in terms of my prejudice on myself. But also it made me hate all sorts of public speaking for quite a long time before I started doing it professionally. So think about how you manage your anxiety. If you have anxiety or any form of sort of neurodiversity and you're kind of concerned about how your brain works, have a think about what helps you. Often things like breathing is a really big part of that. And I know a lot of professional coaches, professional trainers talk a lot about managing your breathing, doing slow breathing, kind of box breathing is a technique where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and you go around in this square. So just before you do any training, professional athletes do this as well. Just breathing and thinking and sort of settling your mind is a massive way to start managing your anxiety. And if you have any other tips, please do share those in the chat, I will say as well. And there are ways we can kind of mitigate even getting to this kind of stressful, anxiety-ridden moment where we're in the middle of a presentation, we've forgotten all our words and we're having a breakdown because we don't know what to do. So what we do first off, of course, is plan. We've already done a lot of planning. We've built that presentation that we talked about earlier. We've thought about what content we need to put in there. We've thought of our structure. We've managed our time. The next section is then connecting. How do we connect with the audience? Are we looking at people? Are we smiling? Are we standing up the front? Or are we hiding behind a podium, trying to sort of hide behind the laptop? We want to connect with the audience because they're there to hear you. They're excited to learn more about you and what you're going to talk about. So don't be afraid when you're asked to kind of stand up and connect with people, because that's who we are as humans, right? We want to be able to connect with people. Thinking about your sort of, you can be funny and you can joke in this time. I often try and make as many jokes as I possibly can and hope that one of them land, which probably is quite tedious for some people. But for me, it helps me just kind of get into the zone and kind of level out. Also connecting with people, you can learn more about them and then you can reflect on kind of their questions and talk about them in a little bit more detail. So having someone that you can kind of go to and chat to about these things can be really helpful in this space. The next one is challenge. So this is about challenging your own negative thoughts and negativity about yourself, thinking, oh, I can't do this, I'm too scared, I'm going to be rubbish, they're going to hate me, all these sorts of things that we kind of naturally develop over time. But if we can refocus and reframe the way we think, we can start to be like, okay, this is not a scary thing. I'm going into this interview because it's an opportunity. It's something that I want to do. It's a job that I'm really interested in about. They want to find out more about me. It's not about them telling me that I'm rubbish. It's about them being like, brilliant, thank you for sharing that information with you. We'll be in contact. That's what you're going to hear. We have a lot of really difficult ways of speaking up about ourselves. And I feel like that's a whole nother presentation that I could potentially do about kind of self-reflection and thinking about who we are, but really try and challenge yourself. The power pose, hands on hips, shoulders back, head up. You may not want to do this in front of people, but it might be something to do in the, the car park outside or before you go on a stage. Just centering yourself and setting yourself up in that power pose. You can't see me doing it because I'm sat down. But this has actually been proven to be really effective. There was a piece of research where they took two groups of people who were going into interviews and they taught them about power poses. One group learned about power poses and kind of positive positioning, and the other group weren't told anything. And they found that the group that learned about being confident and standing confident did a lot better in the interviews. So power pose, don't underestimate the power pose. It's really, really useful. A lot of athletes use this as a way of kind of like engaging and starting their performance. We talked about breathing. Find different breathing techniques. Find the one that works for you as well. It's very easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, I do lots of different breathing, but it's dependent on who is able to do different things, what breathing works for you. And then next is opportunity. Remembering that this is an opportunity for you to stand up and talk. This is not punishment. This is not something that is dangerous or nasty for you. This is a positive thing that's happening. You've been asked to come to an interview. That's brilliant. Lots of people don't get to that stage. And even if you don't get the job from this, at least you've done it. At least you've tried. And next time we have an option to do another presentation and you'll be able to talk about yourself even better. The more you practice, the more you prepare yourself, the more you get other people to watch you present, the better this opportunity will become for you. And something we also have to think about is getting feedback. So even if we get the job, or if we don't get the job, or if we have finished our presentation and we're going off to finish the rest of our workday, make sure you get feedback. Make sure you find out about what happened, what people thought of you. It sounds scary. And I get negative feedback, I get positive feedback, and it's all stuff that is useful for you to help reflect on who you are and what you're doing and how far you've come and what is next for you as well. So definitely always ask for feedback. So if that's a written feedback, you might have a form that you have at the end of training. I have one at the end of the training. You can get someone to scan a QR code and find out a little bit more about that. So definitely check that out and have a think about getting some feedback from people. So to conclude, and I've just got a notification that I have 10 minutes left. Planning your presentation is a really, really important thing to think about. It's something that you need to have to reduce your anxiety, but it also means that you are fully prepared. It's the same with everything that we do in life. And someone actually has put in the chat, Arif has put in the chat, normally I prepare my presentations several times before the event so that I become familiar with the content and the duration of the presentation. I try to focus on maintaining eye contact with my audience. Brilliant, amazing advice. So yeah, this presentation that I've built for you today, this is not the first draft of this presentation. I've gone back and I've done a few bits, I've tweaked it. I've gone off and I have sort of chats with people that I work with, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should include that, I should include that, I should talk about this. Okay, maybe there's not time for this, I'll take this bit out instead. So yeah, think about your presentation and spend some time with it, sit on it, sleep on it, have a little ideas, put all your ideas down and then pull them out and change them. Be confident in what you know and what you don't. You are only human. You are only one type of human. So think about who you are, what you're trying to achieve, and what you have capacity to do. We all have different capacities as people. So what is your capacity? Try and be prepared for all eventualities. That's a very difficult one, right? Because the unknown is absolutely terrifying. But having some idea of what might happen, maybe thinking about, okay, I've created this presentation, here are some questions that may come out of this. Try and kind of preempt some of these things. And as I say, don't try and bluff it. Don't try and just lie your way through an answer, because people know when you're doing that. Be honest, be thoughtful, maybe think about other questions you can come out of that as well. And the last one here, which I think it may sound a little bit patronizing, but do have fun with it. Have fun, be proud of what you're presenting. You have been either asked to go to an interview or you're doing something that is relevant to your job, your career, your passion. So be enthusiastic and have fun in this, because otherwise, again, people feed off energy. Energy is something that we can sort of feed off in different ways. Think about, okay, I'm having a good time, therefore my audience is having a good time. Even if they're not interested in the content, at least they will be happy and enjoy your presentation. So that brings me to the end. That was a lot of talking. So thank you if you've stuck around in the presentation for this long. It's really nice to see that people are engaging. So thank you to the people that have put some comments in the chat. If you have any more comments at this stage, please do put some questions and things in the chats that are available to you. I'm happy to chat through those. I've included the resources that I've reflected on today. There's some useful links for you about jobs and kind of public speaking. That public speaking coach, Ving Yang, is fantastic. He's almost a little bit cheesy because he's so enthusiastic and so positive. And I actually really like that about him, because he gives some really great advice and he uses loads of really great examples. So if you're struggling with one particular thing, you can definitely find something out about that on his channel. So do have a look at those. And there's some other resources that I have shared here as well. But that does bring me to the end. I do have an evaluation form. So if you're on your phone or you're watching this on live, you can just scan this QR code. That's good for me. That comes back to me at the Kite Trust, so I can find out a little bit more about what I've done today and if this training was useful for you. You can also find us on social media at the Kite Trust. And of course, you can, if you're using Blossom social media, you can find out lots of information about the great programs that they do. But thank you very much. That brings me to the end. Steph, are you there?
Yes, I am. We do have 5 questions come through. We've got like 5 minutes left, so maybe a minute a question, maybe. Let's see then. All right. So 1, how do you balance authenticity with performance? Because I sometimes feel like presenting means losing my natural tone or personality.
So I always I think authenticity over anything is really important, because if you're not being your authentic self in a space, people can sense that energy and they sense that that is not truly you. And obviously there is a level of professionalism that we have to meet depending on kind of the demands of the presentation. But I think it's really important that you are enthusiastic and positive. Like, I know I'm neurodivergent, so, and I know I have ADHD, and I'm not going to let that sort of be dampened by presenting. I'm going to throw my hands around. I'm going to talk at my preferred pace, but I also make sure that I'm thinking that other people are using this space and I need to make this accessible to people. So make sure your enthusiasm isn't blocking out the kind of content, as it were.
Question 2, is it just about confidence? I hear a lot of people oozing confidence when they have no quality content at all.
I mean, that is often the case. There are some people who get overconfident in content and overconfident in their skills, and maybe the content lacks. So I think the confidence is vital, because obviously you want to be able to share your information. I've been to presentations where I've actually been super interested in the content. I'm really excited to find out more about it. And I've learned stuff, but I haven't enjoyed the presentation. So you do have to find, again, that balance of like, okay, enthusiasm, but also don't talk rubbish, because that does happen sometimes.
All right, thanks. Question number 3, when talking about silence or pauses, is this a skill or a byproduct of comfort?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think it is a practice that you have to kind of work on. As you notice, I kind of take a sip of a drink every so often. And what that is doing for me is it's refocusing me, and kind of like, it's almost like a paragraph break or a chapter break for me. And just having a little sip of water, I may not necessarily be thirsty, but I might be, but it's also a good way of just having a little pause and restarting. So I think they are important because they can help you sort of refocus yourself and think, okay, have I talked about this? Have I talked about all the relevant things? Have I covered everything I wanted to do on the slide? Okay, next, I can move on to the next point. So don't be afraid to kind of try that out. A little bit of silence isn't the end of the world. People think that, oh, if I'm not talking, then people are going to lose interest. I have to talk constantly the whole time. But actually, you sometimes need those little pauses for people to absorb information and just let them kind of sit with that thought for a moment. So don't be afraid of trying that out and seeing how that works for you.
Number 4, we're always being told to stand out. How do you avoid overperforming or becoming performative just for the sake of attention?
That is, again, another really good question. Overperforming. I mean, for the sake of attention, that can be very difficult. And I mean, there are people in this world that have a lot of power by being confident and very loud and aggressive in their opinions and presentations. And you can be a really good public speaker, but you can also be an asshole, right? Like, that is something that can happen. So I think it's about self-reflection. And I think that feedback part is really important. If you get feedback, make sure you reflect on it. And like, if you are talking to someone one-to-one, be like, oh, like, can you tell me a bit more about that? And if it is negative, I think, okay, this is not necessarily a slight on me as a human being, as a person. It's maybe that I need to change something and adapt something. So when I was learning to be a presenter, I was always have like regular sort of feedback sessions where my boss would come and watch, or someone else, even from another department, would come and watch and sit there and just take notes and be like, this is what we thought, this was good, this is what you could maybe work on. So confidence is important, but also don't get cocky, right? Like, you are still in a space where people are looking to you for information, and you need to be responsible for that as well.
Last but not least, a lot of advice on public speaking focuses on posture, moving, and power poses. How can these be adapted or reimagined for people with physical disabilities or limited mobility? I've often had to limp my way across a stage because of my anxiety around boring people because I'm stationary.
Yeah. So this is something that again, this is where that preparation comes in of like, look, I have accessibility issues. I need to know what that space is going to be like. I need this information. I think not being afraid to ask for that information is really, really important, because I have seen people who have been in interviews in inaccessible places, in wheelchairs, or they have disabilities. And it's usually because they haven't called ahead or said anything, which I know is exhausting for some people, but if you can make sure those things are in place beforehand, that can be really, really helpful to just take that anxiety off you. And it means then you don't have to sort of stress about moving around. And of course, I talk about power poses and like the physical movement. When I'm training, I'm a nightmare because I have to really be careful not to flail too much because I know I'm doing a lot of this. But at the same time, it's human and it's something that should be celebrated and talked about. Like the ADHD of me is not my negative side. It's something that I celebrate, and I'm like, I'm going to use this energy to channel into my presentation. So yeah, I mean, power poses are useful and they're really helpful, but if you can adapt that in a way that's suitable for you and think about, okay, what makes me feel good in my space, in the capacity that I have? What do I do on a day-to-day basis when I'm feeling anxious that I can do in this space? So adapting based on what your needs and your requirements are can be really, really important. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something, because everyone has the capacity to share information about themselves.
We don't have any more questions coming through. So we can close. Do you have any last words or?
No, well, thank you so much for having me to do this. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been a really nice. It's actually been quite personal for me because I'm like, oh, this is actually something I knew a lot more about than I thought. So being able to create a presentation on it and talk about it has been really, really nice, and I'm really glad that people have had some thoughts about it and are thinking about, okay, what can I do next to kind of improve my skills and my capacity. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or wants to know more about me or the work that I do or my organisation, you can email me directly. My information is all on our website. It's training@thekitetrust.org.uk. You can contact me anytime.
Thank you, KP. Thank you so much for really fantastic insights and advice that you shared with us today. I noticed the personal touch, so appreciate that. A big thank you to everyone in the audience as well. Your comments and the questions have been truly valued. If you have any further thoughts or reflections, something you can remember later on, because it usually happens like once we're out of the room, we're like, oh, I didn't ask this. You please don't hesitate to reach out either directly to KP or to myself or anyone in Blossom. Your feedback is very valuable to us because it helps us shape our workshops to better serve the needs of our queer and trans young communities. So please send those through to us. Stay updated on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Eventbrite. You can check out our website, blossom.lgbt, to join our mailing list as well. Finally, if the mentorship scheme for queer young LGBT interests you, whether as a mentor or mentee, please do get in touch for more information. On that note, take care, have a lovely evening, and bye-bye.
Bye.